Good afternoon, Albany State faculty and staff who will be reviewing and hopefully approving my change project for the 2025 semester of the Tier 2 Educational Leadership Program. First off, before I get started, I want to share a little background about my school and my setting in which my presentation, my change project occurs. For my school, I am one of three assistant principals with a principal, and each one of assistant principals have our own school within a school here at Jordan Vocational High School in Columbus, Georgia, Muskogee County School District. So what that means is that essentially I have a miniature school within my own school, in which I do my own teacher observations. I do my own discipline for my academy. We call them academies instead of school loves. We call them academies. So for the freshman academy, I do the discipline. I do the teacher evaluations. I do safety for the school. I'm on a school-wide effort. I do Swiss daily reporting for behavior resolutions. I control the duty rosters, and I'm also the safety coordinator. So I wear many hats, but I have my own academy within Jordan Vocational High School. And one of the focuses I want to focus on, because I've worked with the freshman academy, I want to focus on literacy in ninth grade English. So we're going to look at supporting struggling readers in ninth grade English language arts through response to intervention. So the abstract, as we get into it, I had some issues earlier with sharing my video on the screen, but I think I've rectified that issue here. So we want to promote ninth grade student Lexile scores through language arts literacy strategies. So what we found was that, well, what I know from being in education for 10 years is typically in elementary and middle school, students are tested every year for language arts and math at the bare minimum. And every now and then they'll sprinkle a science test and a social studies test in, but there's heavy emphasis on language arts and mathematics through the point of eighth grade. Once they get to ninth grade, it starts to taper off. They don't get tested but one time in Georgia for the language arts content. There's one biology test, there's one language arts test, there's one U.S. history test that catches history, and then there's algebra. So they take a total of 4 Georgia Milestone courses throughout their whole time in high school. And Georgia Milestones also were one of the indications for Lexile and college and ready, college and career preparedness is showed and displayed. Now, the issue with that is, currently it's in 11th grade American literature, and that is an area in which we don't get data from until they get to 11th grade. So what are we doing from ninth grade, 10th grade, and get to 11th grade where they finally get a test? By that point, they've pretty much made their bed. They're either going to graduate, they're not going to graduate. And by that point, they're either going to be on grade level for college and career readiness, or they're not going to be at that point. So I want to focus on getting the ninth graders that we have. Once we bring them in, how are we going to support those ninth graders? Because we're finding that a lot of them are behind, and we need to get them to where they need to be so they can focus and they can achieve in all disciplines, not just language arts, because literacy transcribes to how well they perform in social studies, how well they perform in science, math, and even our CTA pathways that we offer here at Jordan Vocational High School. So my participants, of course, are the ninth grade students of the Freshman Academy. So methods and procedures we're looking at, we're going to administer professional development, or we did administer professional development on Tier 1 literacy strategies in conjunction with Beable. And a little backstory about Beable. Beable is the new literacy program that is district adopted. The former program, which is a sister program of Beable, was Achieve 3000. And a little backstory about Achieve 3000 in our district, it was not effective. It measured literacy and it measured lexile range, but it was not effective as far as the way it was being used and implemented. The students were basically given, instructions from the district that we had to follow out, that, carry out, that they would do 2 assignments per class per week. So, there wasn't much, follow through. There wasn't a system and checks and balances in place. Basically, the kids were just told, hey, you need to do 2 articles a week at 75% or higher. And that was the goal. And that's how the Lexile measures were adjusted positively or negatively. So if they were able to hit their target, their Lexile range grew. If they're missing the target and not getting those 75% scores on the first try, it would drop the Lexile. So we wanted to get away from that frame of thought for the students, because it was pretty much checking the box. The teachers were checking the box, because a lot of times schools would just say, hey, did you do your 2 achieves for social studies, science, ELA, math? And there was no follow through as far as delivering instruction. It was basically, I'm going to assign you an article I would like, or you can pick your own articles. So the Achieve 3000 platform did not cater to the needs of our students in our diverse school setting or the district. So students will complete the Lexile assessment through this Beable program for the baseline data. All right, we're going to identify students who are currently not reading within the ninth grade Lexile band, and what we started to find when we did our research and looked at the Lexile scores to achieve 3000 from the year before we launched our Beable. And the majority of the school, the average was we were reading on a fourth grade reading level in high school. So that can kind of speak to the deficits we're seeing across multiple disciplines that, hey, literacy is a problem. It's not going anywhere. What are we going to do about it? So teachers from there, at that point on, are going to tier their students and begin using tier 1 instructional practice to better engage the students in the text. Instead of releasing students to do independent work, we need to find ways, or needed to find ways, to engage the kids and make sure they're actually understanding what they're reading and that the teachers are engaging them on the tier 1 level. And we're going to get into some of those root causes and problems and some of the things we found through our empathy surveys for parents and the surveys we conducted with teachers. We're going to find out some good information about what some of the problems we perceive to be attributing to the literacy deficits. So student data will be monitored throughout the school year in collaborative common planning meetings and data team meetings, which will offset each other bi-weekly. So 1 week you'll be collaborative planning, going over lesson plans and strategizing how you're going to deliver instruction for your students. And the following week at the same day and time, you'll be meeting, going over data, you'll be tiering your students and talking about how you're going to support those tier 2 and tier 3 students. Teachers will be observed and given feedback from the administration on their tier 1 instructional practices. So that's the methods and procedures and an overview of what took place in the Change Project. So introduction. At Jordan Vocational High School, College and Career Academy was actually the first vocational school in the country. It transformed to the name we have now, Jordan Vocational High School, but there's a high need we have to raise our ninth grade students. Our background stems from 90% economically disadvantaged, but 100% of our students receive free lunch. So we're a Title I school. We get funding for lunch. We get Title I funds and any funds that come along with being, a socioeconomically disadvantaged school. So we know the need. Our high school students are behind Lexile appropriate range. When we looked at the data from the year before, we realized that, okay, the Lexile range for any ninth grade, school-wide, the Lexile is equivalent to about a fourth grade, and that is nowhere near where we want to be as far as college and career ready, prepared. I mean, we have kids going to the vocational workforce, military. We also have kids, graduating with a high school diploma in hopes of going to a post-secondary school, such as a technical school or a traditional four-year or JUCO school, junior college school. Some of the root causes we found in our own building when we started looking internally, we started doing our own empathy surveys to see what do we see, what was the need, what were the causes for some of the issues we were seeing with literacy. And school-wide, some of the feedback we got were visibility is kind of low for administration. So some teachers felt like administration was only there to do the required observations, and they had very little observations and support was had in between those times. That's unfortunate to hear. As an administrator, for those who are in the position, have had the position, it requires a lot. You have to be meaningful as far as getting time to go to those classrooms and observe. And for the teacher to feel like you're only doing the ones that are required, I can't change how they feel. However, it's something that was heard. So we want to start getting the classroom more than the required observation. So we're going to address that in the project. Tier 1 instruction needs strengthening in the classroom. We have a lot of teachers who are not traditional teachers by trade. They started off doing something else. They had a 4-year degree and they decided, hey, I want to teach. So we have alternate preparation opportunities in which they become certified, such as Georgia TAP program or doing a master's program to get the certification they need. So we have a lot of teachers who start off either not certified, or we have teachers who have very little years of experience. And that comes through the hiring process. Our local 4-year school, Columbus State University, they pump out some good graduates. However, the graduates who decide they're going to stay in Columbus, they kind of get in the rumor mill and figure out, or get hearsay about what the best schools are, or you shouldn't work at this school. And a lot of times the schools that are not Title I schools have a pretty good job, are easily able to fill positions. At one of the schools on the north side of town, or the schools that are considered to be the good schools of Columbus, they have an opening. As soon as they post it, they have, lots of applicants, lots of people pursuing those positions. So it doesn't take long for them to find a quality candidate. For us, sometimes the reality is we have to staff teachers with what's available. So we'll find somebody who's interested in teaching, that's has a clean background, is willing to start learning and to do the learning on the job. So we have to find those teachers who are not certified that are in the portal. We give them a chance because at the end of the day, we need teachers teaching, and we can work on the quality of instruction along the way. So if they're willing to learn, we're willing to teach them as they become an educator. Um, Parents need some literacy support resources. We're going to address that in the Change Project. We have parents who want to support and help their children, but they do not know how. They need resources from the school. They need things they can do at home. Because at this point in high school, I mean, it's sad to say, if a kid is struggling at reading out of high school, it's increasing the likelihood they will drop out of school. And we do not want to see that reality for our students. We want to see our students be successful. So the Change Project is going to hit and check the boxes to help support our students at home, parents as well. We also knew we needed school-wide norms for language arts. Because we have a wide variety of teaching backgrounds, some teachers who, 15, 20 years of experience, who came in traditional routes, only thing they've ever done is teach. And then we have those who, may have been, this might be their second or third career, or they may have just came out of undergrad with a degree in something else and decided, hey, I want to give teaching a try. So we need to come up with norms that basically have a school-wide expectation for what the language arts instruction will look like. And Senate Bill 211 mentions comprehensive reviews of educational programs. So that's some research that was conducted. So the goal here is kind of loose. It's kind of lofty. It's a goal I initially started with, but I decided to stick with the goal because I feel as if Lexile growth of any sorts would be significant. We want to see Lexile growth. So the goal I set was by implementing Tier 1 literacy strategies, 70% of ninth grade students will show Lexile growth and be able by April 2025. All right, so 70% of our students, we're looking to see some growth of some sorts by the end of the project, in which we're going to see and find out what happened in our study. So when we talk about barriers to literacy, there can be a myriad of reasons. We can play the blame game. We can point the finger. The biggest elephant in the room is COVID-19, the pandemic that swept us by storm in 2020, and it changed the way we looked at education. We realized education had to have backup plans. So there was a big push for technology. Everybody needs to have a computer. Everybody needs to be able to work from home if necessary. What if this happens again? So there was a lot of what ifs and a lot of things that presented themselves. And these hybrid instructional practices came about. So we finally had an option where kids could actually be virtual and receive instruction at home. Now, the quality of the virtual instruction is up for debate. What happened the first year, 2021-22, when we came back to school, where in Muskogee County, we had a hybrid model in which some kids were able to stay at home and work, and other kids were able to come in class. And some schools gave a little variety where a kid could stay home, decide to log on to the Zoom, and they would get credit for attendance. So it was a very new experience for all educators. It was quite challenging to teach in that setting because once again, you're comparing, it's kind of hard to keep track and progress monitor students who are not getting face-to-face instruction. It's kind of hard to tell if a kid is engaged just by seeing if they're looking at a Zoom camera, if they have the camera on and off. It was just a lot of management, a lot of uncharted territory that we had never seen before. During this time period, we believe a lot of those students were on their cell phones, and cell phones continue to be a problem. Now, at our school, our policy for cell phones, from bell to bell, there is no cell. So we teach our kids to be present, prepared, and professional. And part of that is teaching the appropriate time to use your cell phone. So we tell them from bell to bell, as soon as you enter your classroom, you should not be on your cell phone, shouldn't be seen, and they know the expectations there. Where they're in the hallway, the cafeteria, on the way to class, on the way home, those are the appropriate times to use the phone. So it gives them that real life context of when to use your phone. As a professional, you're not going to use your phone when you're in a meeting, you're conducting business. So we teach them the same thing. When they're conducting business in the classroom, they're not going to be on their cell phones, and that's the expectation. A lot of times we contribute funding to the quality of education get delivered. And you can get into the private school versus public school. What school gets this type of funding? What school doesn't get this type of funding? What school gets more resources because of the tax area the students that attend the area are. Another common tactic is blaming the previous grade or the previous school setting, elementary blaming, middle school blaming elementary, elementary, getting the brunt of that burden of bearing, oh, these kids came to us this way, and the same thing goes up to high school. But once they get to high school, it does us the kids no service, no justice to continue to blame the previous schools. At this point, what are we going to do to support these students to get them where they need to be to do what they want to do? And then also we talked about parental support. Parents are at home, they want to support their kids, but the parents also are not certified, for the most part, are not certified in education. They do not know what literacy strategy to employ or how to support their kids. You know, you can send home an assignment, but once it gets home, if the parents don't understand it, kids don't understand it, that homework is coming back to you, probably not up to the quality that you would think. So, in my theory of action, this is the theory. If the assistant principal delivers high quality literacy strategies in professional learning, completes frequent observation cycles with effective feedback, then the teachers will be able to implement effective reading strategies to deliver quality instruction, meeting collaborative groups to support student learning so that students will increase their lexile level in reading capacity, actively engage in literacy text. That is the theory of action. So we know the quality of instruction has to be a certain tier. We know that their teachers need follow through. You need to inspect what you expect. So you have to go through to see if what you implement is actually taking place in the class. And you have to check it often. You can't check it just once here and there. You have to check it. You have to have a process in place. You have to have a observation cycle in which you're looking for that growth. You're looking to see, hey, did I see these look forwards this last time I came to your classroom? All right, I've come back to your classroom. I'm still not seeing these look forwards. How can I support you? And employ strategies to help support that teacher. The teachers also need to be equipped. So you can't expect the teacher to deliver something that you haven't taught. It's a wild assumption to assume that somebody can carry out an expectation you haven't delivered. All right, so we have to implement and give those effective reading strategies to deliver that quality instruction. And then we need some follow-up. We need some support. All right. It's not reasonable or feasible for an administrator to come to a teacher's class every day to track the growth over time. But what we can do is provide a community in which collaborative supports are available to support that student learning. So that's where we talk about a collaborative team meetings. And in our school, what it looks like this year, all the teachers of the same content are in the same planning. So all the language arts teachers have planning together during first block, second block. All of the social studies teachers have the same planning. Third block, all the science teachers have the same planning. Fourth block is the math department. The only outliers for that are the CTA. They kind of spread here and there, but they don't need to collaborate as much as the teachers do in the four major disciplines. In regards to Lexile, the students are going to reach the expectation which you set. So if there's a low expectation, if there's a low standard quality of work that you're expecting from them, they're going to hit the target every time. But if we challenge the students and we challenge them in an engaging way, the students can achieve great things. So some of the evidence we have here, we talk about Hattie's influences. Hattie looked at different effect sizes and basically determined if if instructional practices, programs, supports, if they're effective. So for it to be considered effective, according to Hattie, it has to measure over 0.4. All right, so response to intervention, one of the interventions we're using to support students is effect size of 1.29. So we know response to intervention is basically, we know there's a problem with a student, you know there's some issues. Once you've tiered those students, how are you going to support them? What are you going to do for your kids who aren't tier 1, the kids who need tier 2 supports or tier 3 supports? So once you're able to tier those students, how are you going to support them and give them what they need to even the playing field or even to get them where they need to be? If you can't even the playing field, how are you going to support those students academically? In prior years before, we had a program curriculum in language arts called Collections. According to Ed reports, it did not meet the expectations that Ed reported out. The current curriculum, My Perspectives, it definitely meets the secondary language arts program in college and career preparedness, according to Ed reports. So the old curriculum that we were using did not meet the expectation, and the current curriculum we're using, My Perspectives, does meet according to Ed reports. Now, Beable, like I mentioned before, is the new literacy program. ESA ranked it as promising, and Achieve 3000, it wasn't ranked insufficient. However, it's the program that we used before, and we moved away from it. The study found that the odds of being college and career ready at the end of the year increased by about 4% among students with an average first try score of 75% or greater. So increased by 4% amongst those students who are getting 75% or greater. So the kids who are doing what they're supposed to do, the only gains they're promising, or what the study found, is that an increase of about 4%. Uh, that can be considered minimal in opinion, especially by the time you get to high school. Once they get to high school, 4% growth is not a whole lot going towards the grand scheme of things. And then tier one instruction, materials considered standards aligned have a tendency to be simple, simply add on core instructional content, optional text, rather than truly evolve their materials to align with college and career standards. So we want to increase that actual day-to-day instruction is going on. What supports are teachers providing? How are they differentiating instruction? How are they making sure students are hitting success criteria for the standard? So that's standards-based instruction happening at a high level, formative strategies in which students are assessed often, um, formatively and summatively. How do you know what the students know? What, do the students know what their success criteria are? How do you know the students have learned? How are you collecting that information? How often are you collecting that information? What are you doing with the information you collected? That's the things we want to focus on with our tier one instruction with our teachers. So, some of the actions for effective leadership, the action steps we came up with are supporting teacher capacity by attending common planning meetings. So once we build that capacity, once we have the structure in place, all right, what are we going to do with these meetings? During the common planning meetings, teachers are meeting with teachers who also teach language arts. They have the same planning, so they have time to meet. We have a safeguarded time at Thursdays. They're meeting every other week, one time for common planning and one time for data teams. So they're not meeting for common planning, they're meeting for data teams. All right, so actually actively engage and coming prepared with the materials you need for those meetings is a big part of what we're doing to help support, well, the teachers are doing to help the efforts towards the common planning meetings. So the administration and academic coaches are overseeing that insight. Coherent instructional system. So we have the collaborative planning meetings. So we built the master schedule to the point where teachers are able to meet with teachers who teach the same thing as them. We have progress monitoring going on, and then data team meetings. They're tiering their students through the Beable Literacy Program. So once you get the Lexile data from the initial launch, what are you doing with that information? How are you tiering your students, and how are you supporting them? The My Perspectives pacing guide that the district has provided, we're going to follow that with fidelity. We're going to try to keep up with it. We're going to remediate. We're going to move on. We're going to go back and spiral review. We're going to do all those things to make sure we're supporting our students. And then we're going to deliver tier one instructional literacy strategies that were used and implemented through our RISE professional development. So those weekly common collaborative planning meetings aren't optional. We don't pull teachers from the collaborative planning meetings to do other things. We make sure we keep that time sacred because this is a big effort. It's kind of hard for people to be on the same page if they're not allowed to meet. I've been in a school setting before where I was teaching, and every other day, because of the substitute problem, we would have to pull coverage for classes. So sometimes you miss the data team meeting, or you try to be in the data team meeting while you're covering the class on your laptop, and it's not as effective because you can't talk freely. You can't speak on the data that is taking place with your students because you're in front of other students. So we want to make sure we safeguard that time, and we've done a very good job of being able to get teachers subs in place. Once teachers know they're going to be out, they put it in, and we've have a new system that helps with getting subs in our building. We actually have a preferred list of subs who come in. So we safeguard the collaborative planning time and data team time. That way teachers have no excuse not to meet, not to know what's going on with students, not to know what their counterparts are teaching, what they're doing, and they should be able to collaborate to come up with a plan together so the weight doesn't fall on one person. And that's important in the school setting. So one expectation is, some schools, and we've been down that road before, where teachers struggling to turn in lesson plans. So turning in lesson plans is half the battle, but what are the quality of work of the lessons? How engaging are the lessons? What are you turning in? We know that there are times where you have a lot going on. Some teachers may submit an old lesson plan, or they may submit a plan and they do something completely different because that's not really the plan. It's just something I have to turn in by the deadline to have my lesson plans in. So we want to make sure we are monitoring the weekly lesson plans to make sure teachers are doing what they say they're doing and that is effective instruction embedded in the lesson plans. All right, the professional capacity, the professional developments occur once a month for our tier one literacy instructional strategies. It's not optional. You don't get opt out for those professional developments because how can you develop yourself professionally if you're not there? So you don't get an opt out. We make sure those teachers have that time safeguarded so they're able to go to those. And because we're on a semester block schedule, we have 100 minutes. So each class period is 100 minutes, but the planning is also 100 minutes. So it's more than enough time for teachers to effectively plan, get developed professionally as needed. And it very seldom calls for us to have meetings after school because we have such time safeguarded for our meetings, professional developments, collaborative planning, and data teams. One thing we want to make sure we implement it were peer observations. All right, getting to see peers who teach the same thing as you can be very beneficial because not only you just hearing seeing them one week talk about it in their common planning, because you have the same planning period, you're not able to see those teachers, but we were able to find a system in which we could pull coverage for teachers to be able to have time out to schedule an observation with a teacher and go observe strategies live in effect from somebody who's teaching the same thing as them, and even other people in the department who will have more experience. So they had to do 2 peer observations throughout the school year to check that box. And like I said, we hate to say check the box. However, if you don't put the expectation or put a requirement out there, it's not going to happen. So you can't make it optional. And then also preparing literacy, engaging literacy lessons to go with the beable activities, not just releasing the students to, hey, get on here, do this beable lesson, and it should be X, Y, Z should be done by this date. We don't want to do that. We want to make sure our kids are engaged at a high level, that you're using literacy strategies that we talked about through our Tier 1 instruction, and you're engaging and knowing what our students are doing. All right, family and community engagement. We find it typical and very difficult to get parents in for academic things outside of awards days. So typically, the parent liaison nights, the Title I meetings don't garner a whole lot of support. So we found ourselves even bringing information, strategies, and flyers and sign-in sheets to different sporting events. So we'll come to a football game with the same information we'd have at the Title I meeting. So we take that meeting from the engagement night, and we take that information and we'd have it at the gate for the football game, at the basketball games, volleyball games, because parents are there, and since you have them, you might as well captivate their attention, give them a resource. They might not have known they were going to leave with a resource, but they have not been given a choice. So as they come into the game, as they pay for their ticket, they're getting their ticket stub, and they're also getting some information. So we found that to be effective, and we also still conduct our meetings monthly, and we encourage them to bring others to understand what's going on, to meet with our stakeholders and know what's going on with literacy at our school at German Vocational High School. And supporting learning environment. So we encourage teachers without certifications to enroll in teacher prep programs. I know it's difficult to do, but we do have a transfer window in our district, and we've implored some teachers who haven't made steps towards getting that. I mean, we've implored them to look at other options because it's not fair. It's a disservice to our students to have people who are not prepared or not certified continue to be in front of them without holding them accountable. So, you get a certain number of years that you can be here in provisional status and strategic waiver, but then we need to move somebody in who's actually going to be certified or going to get certified. We're going to continue professional development. Like I said, we have teachers who started teaching when Bloom's taxonomy was the latest and greatest, and then depths of knowledge. And now we're really focusing on, there's a big push to support Tier 1 instruction. What's going on the day-to-day in the classroom? What's being assessed? How's it being assessed? Is it standards-based? Do the students know the success criteria? We want the students to be able to speak the language. So when the student is asked, if I come into the classroom, what are we working on? They should be able to look at the board. They can tell you, and they can tell you where they are. They should be able to tell you where they are on that standard, or how close are they to the success criteria. And then the peer walkthroughs are definitely an action step that we think will support our student learning. All right, and then actions for economically disadvantaged. Through the Title I parent engagement meetings, we'll make sure we touch base with families, give them resources. Every student has a laptop in the school. They have Wi-Fi hotspots to support student learning. Transportation for after-school tutoring is provided. So if a student needs to make up a test or if it needs to get supports in any of the content areas, we are able to get them tutoring or a ride home. Most of our students rely on bus transportation. We do have a lot of kids who walk to school, but primarily bus, and we do have some who drive, very few, and we have students who are dropped off. So transportation is a barrier to getting some extra support. We've removed that barrier by providing transportation for those students who need tutoring. For our ESOL, our English as a second language population, we're one of 3 ESOL schools, high schools in our 8 high school district. So we have a program called Elevation that basically gives the general education, special education teachers strategies that equip them with information and ways to support students that do not speak English as a primary language. Our biggest ESOL population is the Hispanic demographic. We have 3 ESOL teachers who are bilingual. They have 2 primary means of supporting students. They have a push-in model in which they're in the classroom with the kids, immersing them in the language, whether it be biology, algebra, geometry. They're in there until they get to a certain phase and they graduate to the next phase and they get less supports. And then we have sheltered content, which is essentially a pull-out class for students who receive ESOL supports. So basically, they're taught to advocate for themselves, how to use translate, how to use language acquisition. They're figuring out the English language as they're learning the content, and it is a very impressive sight to see how hard our ESOL teachers work to support our demographic. And then we want to make sure we build cultural awareness events to build community. So with our ESOL population, one of the things that has taken off in the last couple of years is our Hispanic Heritage Month celebrations. And there is a big old food truck celebration in which the different various food trucks of Hispanic culture come out, and there's music, there's games, and it's a real cultural immersion that students that are not Hispanic and students who are Hispanic get to basically share and fellowship together and learn something new about one another. So our data collection methods, we're progress monitoring. So in our data team meetings, our teachers are bringing data from the Beable Lexile data software, Beable Lexile software, and they're looking at tier their students, supporting their students, and finding ways to support those students in the tier 2 and tier 3 demographic, certainly. And then the walk through classroom feedback. So they're getting 2 types of feedback. They're getting administrative and academic coach feedback, and then they're getting peer to peer feedback. So it's one thing to hear from your evaluator, but it's another thing to hear from your peer, and some things it causes and evokes some reflection that probably didn't happen before, but you get to say, okay, well, the administrator said that, but also my peer said that. So it kind of helps marry, feedback, and it makes it effective because you're hearing from your supervisors as well as those who work alongside you and you're working with in the common planning meetings. So the baseline data is collected through Beable Literacy Program. Biweekly data dig through data teams is happening in those meetings. And in our study, in our program here, my change project, we're looking at the control group, which is the group of students who are not receiving intervention. This is a group of kids that is one class compared to a group that's going to get the intervention. So it's a general education group of students who, unbeknownst to not getting any type of intervention, and then we have students who are identified that have a need. So this intervention group here, they are getting the tier 1 instructional strategies delivered. We're looking at how effectiveness of how those strategies are going to help support and improve learning in those classes. So the intervention we're trying to see, is the change going to be significant? So the baseline comparison. The initial comparison between the control group and the intervention read 0.1275. So we failed to reject the null hypothesis. There was no statistically significant difference at baseline. So that was a good indication. So once we collected our data after the intervention, we saw that the number read 0.0063, which was less than 0.05. So we're able to reject the null hypothesis. Statistically significant difference in post-test Lexile scores. So the group that did receive the intervention, they were able to see significant growth. So some of our reflection pieces I thought about here. The implementation of collaborative planning and progress monitoring has positively impacted teacher confidence and supported student learning. Through common planning and collaborative planning, we were able to basically foster a community in which teachers could rely on support, not only from administration, but from one another. Through those meetings, they're able to share the successes, the failures. Hey, what are you doing? Hey, you mind if I come see that? And the teachers get together, they set up a time. Hey, this will be a good day. I'm doing this day. If we can get some coverage for you, we can get you to come down. And it was just great to see teachers excited about seeing each other, supporting each other, and having a community of support versus just saying, hey, the academic coach, the administration, they weren't able to get to me. I haven't got any feedback since the first time they did the observation. So we eliminated that barrier for support. Some next steps, I want to continue to host collaborative plannings next year. The collaborative planning meetings I felt were great. I think they are going to be highly effective, continue to be highly effective for student achievement and supporting student needs. We continue progress monitoring efforts. That should be going on continually, but it's one of those things that wasn't quite inspected properly in years past, so it wasn't really happening as often as it should. The expectation was for teachers to do it, but once if it's not something you're keying in on or getting follow through on, it's probably not going to continue to happen. Requiring peer observations and walkthroughs. We love this idea. I loved it. I think it has been very beneficial for teachers to see one another, to get that growth. I mean, I think it's more impactful to see a teacher actually carrying something out than to just hear like, oh, this is what I do in my classroom. To be able to see it, it speaks volumes. And continue supporting literacy intervention with teaching strategies. Instead of just releasing students to do reading intervention programs, paying for a program and releasing the students to do it, I don't think it's very effective. But using the RTI processes, teaching strategies, having quality tier 1 instruction, I think that's where you get the bang for your buck. So you could have, I think you could go back to the Achieve 3000 software, viable. It doesn't matter what the software is if you're not supporting the students who are using the program. And for next school year, there's been a change in the Georgia State Assessment for the Georgia Milestones, which was formerly the 11th grade. American literature was the tested area for language arts. Is being shifted to 10th grade literature. And one of the things that is unique about our school, because we're on a block schedule, ninth grade algebra and ninth grade language arts have been year-long classes that we've kept. All the other classes have been semester-based. So we're going to make a change next year. We're going to move ninth grade to semester, and we're going to move 10th grade literature to a year-long class support the efforts going on here for 10th grade literature, Georgia Milestones coming 2025, 2026. And hopefully the things we learned through my change project can help support learning, and we can see some growth that we didn't see in the 11th grade American literature scores this year. We can compare those numbers to 10th grade literature and hopefully see some gains. Here's some of my references that I used for my change project. And it's been a pleasure sharing with you. I do want to take a moment to go on record to say the change project significantly helped me complete my PowerSchool portfolio. It definitely took out a lot of the guesswork. I was able to get all the tasks done and do everything that I needed to do because of my change project and the support from my staff. And again, I say thank you. I hope you've enjoyed my change project.